The first half year did have some challenges in it. We had this big spike in the fuel price that has subsequently come down a bit. We're still in a fairly tough economy, and then of course we had some real challenges on the maintenance side with the maintenance provider that caused us to have to incur some additional costs to keep our fleet availability up and running. But despite that, I think we came out fairly well at the end of the day. We are down about 38% on last year, but I think we're going to see a better second half with the fuel price having receded. And we're starting to implement a lot of the recovery measures on the maintenance as well now. So we have our new maintenance provider up and running as from February, and they'll be taking on the first of the aircraft into that new maintenance provider over the next few months. So yeah, I think we'll probably see a better second half. If one really goes back to pure operating profit lines, so simply revenue less operating costs, we actually came out almost the same as last year for the first half. So we did actually recover a lot of the fuel price, we did recover a lot of the dollar inflation, etc. But there were a few other items that had to be dealt with. As mentioned, the extra lease cost and additional fleet to keep the fleet availability up and running. We did put through a little bit of extra depreciation just as a normal adjustment on a very big asset base. And then we had a bit of a turnaround. We got one aircraft funded in dollars, and that had a bit of a turnaround in the revaluation of that loan at the end of the period, or 22 million turnaround on that loan account. So those items really made up the difference at the end of the day. But if you really go back to the fundamentals of operating cost versus revenue, we're basically at the same level as last year in the first half. Non-airline business is still doing nicely. We actually, if you take it down to individual businesses, we're now sitting with 14 non-airline businesses that we're operating. A lot of them very much in the infancy, some of them starting to be a little more established. In overall, they contributed 27% towards the profits. So that percentage contribution is starting to grow, and we have some very nice opportunities there to see further growth going ahead. So they're all doing well at this stage. Yeah, so basically we got what was awarded at the High Court in 2017. We got all of that in the settlement, so we're happy with that. The main compromise was just really the period over which the amount is settled, which is I think it was a reasonable compromise in the circumstances. SAA needed more time to deal with the settlement, and we still get the full amount at the end of the day. So we're comfortable with what was achieved. There's been a bit of a movement in volume overall from SAA proper to Mango, but the total market size hasn't really changed, and the total capacity in the market hasn't changed. So ultimately we're sitting with the same total market customer base and the same total capacity in the market, and there's always a little bit of a shuffling backwards and forwards, and it's very hard to tell which passengers have gone where or if they've moved at all. So there hasn't really been a fundamental change in the market dynamics. There's still overcapacity just because we're not seeing market growth, and we haven't seen it now for approximately 8 years. Overall, over the last 8-year period, we have seen about 4% overall market growth, but globally, the total global market's growing at around 5% per annum. So we are very far behind in South Africa still. We're quite ambitious at the moment, especially with all the surrounding businesses. The airline piece, I think, is still going to keep progressing, particularly with the newer aircraft fleet coming in over the rest of this calendar year. So we are replacing all of the last of the older aircraft with new aircraft in the rest of this calendar year, which will again provide a scaling up of profits. But it is still a very tough environment at the moment with the sort of shortage of GDP growth. So we're still very much relying on the non-airline businesses for the more dynamic growth that we like to see. Absolutely, we're not going to drop our 72-year record of profits.